We are so grateful to the panel members who are here to be with us this afternoon to share their knowledge with us. Our moderator for this afternoon is Hau'oli Akaka, Program Manager of the Kamehameha School's Exploration Program, Ho'omaka'ikai. He also oversees KS enrichment programs in the Ko'olau region of Oahu. He completed his uniki rites in Kapapa Kupu Kupu of Hālau Hula O Maiki with his Kumu, Lo'ea Me Kamamalu Klein. He is recognized as a Kumu hula who has competed, judged, and moderated in countless hula competitions and festivals in Hawaii, California, and Japan. Joining him on our panel this afternoon, we have Coline Aiu, Kumu hula for Hālau Hula O Maiki, Hawaii's oldest formal Hawaiian dance school, established in 1946. She is the founder of and choreographer for the Hawaiian Dance Company and dance drama pieces such as Hi'iaka, Pele, and Ka Mo'olelo o Pele. As Kumu hula of Hālau Hula O Maiki, she teaches Hawaiian history, geography, language, culture, and genealogy, as well as mannerisms through the art of hula. Kimo Alama Keaulana is an assistant professor in Hawaiian language and studies, Honolulu Community College. He is also Kumu hula of Lehulu Hula School and a veteran Kumu hula of 42 years. Hawaiian language and cultural resource and consultant, donor of the Kimo Alama Keaulana Mele collection at the Bishop Museum, and has judged numerous and various hula competitions, as well as being a presenter and lecturer of many major Hawaiian music and dance venues. Hōkūlani Holt has been the Kumu hula for Pā'ū O Hi'iaka for over 35 years. She has devoted her professional and personal life to many aspects of Hawaiian culture throughout the islands. Holt-Padilla was a founding member, a parent, and a director of Punana Leo o Maui Hawaiian Language Preschool. She was the first Maui site coordinator for Nāpokā No'eau, the Center for Gifted and Talented Native Hawaiian Children, and she was the Culture and Education Manager for the Kaho'olawe Island Reserve Commission. She currently works at the Maui Arts and Cultural Center as their Cultural Programs Director and continues to lecture at the University of Hawaii, Maui College. And our last panel member, Nathan Nāpokā, is a cultural historian and retired branch chief for culture and history in the State Historic Preservation Division. He has studied traditional hula for 25 years with Ho'akale Kama'u and has also studied hula privately with Auntie Pat Bacon and Auntie Alice Namakelua. Please join me by giving a warm round of applause and welcome to our panel for this afternoon. And I will now graciously and gratefully turn the leash over to Hau'oli. Good luck.
Ma puka hanu o ka laua e mapuno I ka poli o ka vai aloha. Aloha I ke kapa e hukai huki, palai huki lohe. Noi ka huna e, noi maila ka lehua maka noi. Noi ka lehua maka noi. Noi vivo ole I ke anu I ke alaki papa ola e ala e kuhi kuhi lima ka naka o mauna hina e. E hina no paha o auale no. E hina no paha ka ua e ta nui e ali ala e he anu. He anu ole no. Aloha. I was remiss to start with Oli. You know, I went to Kalani Akana's presentation earlier this morning. He started with Mapuka Hanu too. I said, oh yeah, that's right. We have the gods in our presence. We have to make sure we honor them. So aloha no. Sorry, I forgot the poo. I meant to have kahili and poo too. Aloha mai kako. What an honor and privilege. Thank you to Walter and our kauhale kipaipai and all the ohana who invited me to be here, along with all of you today. I'm so nervous, you can't tell. Yeah, and I'm so glad that we have this ambiance that we can sit like we're in our lumiho o kipa and just be real relaxed, and you guys just be maha oi out there as you are, okay? And we'll make pretend we're just talking story, yeah? And you would have it, look, they honor you so much, we have even adornments on our kuahu over here. Yeah, we have fresh altar greenery and flowers, and we even have a seat for laka over there too. So, aloha nui kākou.
Aloha.
So in the program, I have to give a disclaimer that I did not make up any of these questions. They were prescribed and handed to me just now. And also the title, I think the title is so appropriate. Many of us are familiar with the Olelo no Eau. Do you know what number Olelo no Eau this one is? Ali Pauka Ike Ika Hālau Ho'okahi from Tutu Kavena's collection. Do you know what number? Right, it's 203. Olelo no Eau 203. You should know, okay? Check your reference now. The title of our symposium, our presentation is Ole Pauka Ike Ika Hālau Ho'okahi. Not all knowledge is learned in one school. One can learn from many sources. And I think a good selection is one that many of us are familiar with. Yeah, it's stock Olelo no Eau. And it reminds us that Ike and our traditions are varied, yeah? But there are similarities as well. And we're going to learn a little bit about the Ike. Just among this panel of 4, Kumu we have here today, and I would venture to say Loea too, someday. This morning, Auntie Teresa, you alluded to the mana'o of primary source as we were listening to Uncle Eddie and Auntie Myrna Kamai. And I thought, that's right, this afternoon we'll have 4 primary sources. You are, I know whether or not you acknowledge that, you are primary sources now. Yeah, and you are representation. Yeah, you are. I can't wait to hear Uncle Kimo's mana'o and Ike. So I just wanted to say how honored we all are to have you here today and that you'll be sharing. The purpose of this panel, as it relates to culture-based education, is that you are a panel of hula experts, and you're respected as exponents of hula. You will share your Ike and your na'awao, your wisdom, about hula and education. You will share insight in the process that you have experienced in becoming the kumu that you are, and your perspectives on learning and teaching hula. A'oaku, a'o mai. Okay, you can handle that. Did they prepare you ahead of time? You got to set a question. You just take it and go, okay? So, and as we were listening and watching Uncle Eddie Kamai's presentation this morning, we got a little teaser of the Keepers of the Flame. Thank you for that teaser. Yeah, and many of us have seen it already, and I thought, we have many keepers of flames. We have many who are fire starters as well, yeah? You gotta start traditions sometimes. Yeah, they venture to be creative, but we have keepers of flame, we have those who share the flame, we have those who keep it forever and never share it. And then we have those who create the fire, yeah, so. I wonder where you would fall in all of that, and then the next documentary that Uncle Eddie would create would feature some of you, perhaps. Okay, so keep that in mind. Keepers of flame, sharers of flame, fire makers, whatever you be, you are primary sources, and we are so honored to have you. I'm going to ask you a series of questions. I think you already know those pre-described questions, and answer however you fit. You don't have time limit. You know, we have an hour and a half in this panel, but take your time, because as Hawaiians, we're not cognizant of time. Yeah? Yeah. I learned in Kalani's workshop, you know, in stories, time, you never start with once upon a time, that it's more about place and people. That's the most important thing when we tell stories. Yeah, Auntie Hōkūlani, as we said in that workshop. So the first question, think about it, and we can popcorn. We don't have to go in order, so that way you would always be the first to have to answer, yeah, Auntie Colina. Think about it, and as soon as you're ready to answer, you can just kind of gesture or just go with it, okay? Briefly share where you are from and your hula lineage. Who wishes to begin?
Coline.
Okay.
Oh, thank you.
Oh, you was voluntold. That's how it is at Kamehameha. We get voluntold,
That's
you know,
true.
in our task.
Well, my name is Coline Aiu, and I'm a graduate of the first Papa class of Hālau Hula O Maiki, and that was in 1972. And the founder of the Hālau is my mother, Maiki Aiu. Her teacher was Lokalia Montgomery, and Lokalia's teacher was Keaulana. My mother's mentor, her very dear mentor, was Kavena Pukui, and many others like Vicky E. Rodriguez, who taught her the hula ku'i, Alice Namakelua, excuse me, that taught her also hula and mele of different islands and for being in the floats. So my mother had many, many wonderful kupuna who shared their information with her. I think they selected her because she was not only willing to learn, she was more willing to listen and to commit to their dreams and their desires, and especially to their rules of discipline. And so I'm a graduate of Hālau Hula O Maiki, Papalehua.
I think Hoku should go second. Well, he named Jim.
Just go ahead and thank everybody. Okay.
So kuhilani, yeah.
Aloha.
Aloha.
I count my hula from two sources. One, I come from a family of kumu hula. My grandmother was a kumu hula. Of her 7 daughters, 3 were kumu hula. And so I was the next generation to follow. It is through my ohana, which is the long ohana from Maui. We had hula in our home all the time. So it was my grandmother, my auntie, etc., my mother, that our family hula comes from. And then I was born on Oahu, raised partially on Maui, partially on Oahu, and now live completely on Maui. While I was living on Oahu with my mother, I had the distinct opportunity when I was 18 to, I'm gonna get uji, to learn from Hōkūlani Holt-Padilla. And I count it as a privilege, because for more than 6 solid years, all we did was kahiko. I think we learned like wana. And that's only because we had to go someplace and we proceeded to forget it right after that. But for 6 years, I learned from Hōkūlani. And it was Hōkūlani that gave me my love for kahiko. My family, yes, my love for awana, but Hōkūlani, my love for kahiko. And to this very day, the way I teach my classes is the same class structure that she taught us to teach when we went to the communities to teach for her. And so I'm very privileged, and I was very happy to learn from Hōkūlani. And, you know, and then studying my hula genealogies on both sides of my family, they meet. Yeah, they meet. And so it was like, oh, see, that's how that works, is that eventually the hula genealogy meets. So I am privileged to have learned from my family, from my mother, Leanna Woodside, from my aunties, Kahili Long Cummings and May Long Lobenstein, and from my grandmother, Ida Pakulani Ka'aihui Kai Anui Long. Then from Hōkūlani, and her hula genealogy is well documented from her to Auntie Io to Keahiluahine and back through that genealogical line. And so thank you very much for those who took a chance with me. Mahalo.
Mahalo, Auntie.
You should go because you're older than me.
You get more hair than me. I'll go because I can continue from Hoku. I remember Hoku teaching on Oahu and Waimanalo on the Anti-Hōkūlani when I started there in 1973. And I was a student of Anti-Hōkūlani starting in 73. And we stayed with her until she died in 1998. And for 3.5 years, I was with Auntie Hōkūlani and Auntie Io. Auntie Io was sick and she wanted to go to all the schools in the state. She was invited all over the world to dance, and she said, I want to dance for the next generation. And so I got picked. It's just serendipity because they wanted a man and they wanted someone to narrate. So that's where my real learning of hula was. You know, packing up the Larna Dunes and the coffee every morning and going to a different school in the morning and a different school in the afternoon with Auntie Io. And then if we're on a different island doing night concerts, but we did that for 3.5 years. And we might be on the plane going to Hana, and Auntie would say, I think we're going to do the ihe today. I said, what ihe? She said, we're going to do the ihe today. And then from Kahului to Hana, you're learning the ihe dance on top of the airplane. So that night at Helene Hall, you're dancing the ihe dance. So, you know, Auntie, it just went according to how she was inspired. And then you had to be ready and clean to be able to pick up. And all my training was in basically in traditional for all those years with Auntie Hōkūlani. But one thing with Auntie Hōkūlani was, like Hōkū was saying, Hōkū was teaching before I was there, the fundamental hula, the actual dance was what was important to her, and not how many dances you had. We had one person in our halau, and Hōkū knows who that was. We'd have these workshops every year early on. It started actually in 1969, 6 years before Hōkūlea ever sailed out. They were bringing all the Hawaiians together to do hula. Hula really started the Renaissance. From there, we had met the mele classes taught by Auntie Edith. Then they started teaching implements. So hula was the early part of the Renaissance. And I don't think most people realize that. Before that was Department of Parks and Recreations. They carried it for 20 years. These are the people before it was really big and massive as it is today. These were the people that were at the forefront holding on to their traditions. They didn't get a lot out of it in terms of money or glory, but they loved their culture and they were rich because of their culture. But for Auntie, it was learning the fundamental steps. You could dance for a year and only learn the first 4 dances, which was the hela, the uehe, the kawelu, the kaholo. And that's all you're going to do until she's happy with how you ami. No, ami opu, ami properly and clean. So that she said, after when you pau boy, no matter where you go, you put those steps together, you can do any dance. And that was the real thing about Auntie, was that she was a dance teacher and she really emphasized the teaching of dance. After my Auntie died in 98, Auntie Pat Bacon was a friend of mine for quite a long time, and for about 10 years, I tag teamed with Auntie Pat, and we went through all the chants in the museum, and we indexed them, and we set up the mele collection there, and the little book, Na Mele Velo. And during that time, I was able to fill in the little pieces of Auntie Hōkūlani's genealogy that weren't complete from Auntie Hōkūlani and Auntie Io, and I realized that they all came from Kawena. Kawena learned from Keahiluahine. Keahiluahine was Auntie Io's mom. So Auntie Pat and Auntie Io were like on the same rank in terms of this branch. And then from that branch came the other branches that you'll hear. But it's funny, they all go back. When you take a step or two back, it's either Kawena ni Lalaole, Keahi, or a few little satellites out there like Akonimika Puhaheo, and then you had Keaka Kanahele, and you had a few of them and their people came to our workshops that we're having early on. But it's funny when you think of the thousands of halau that are around today, where they all end up. If you take only 1 or 2 steps back, that's my background, yeah.
No, that's right. You know, like how you said, you know, everything just comes from that one person. The person that I credit for bringing me out in the hula is Adeline Lee. She's Department of Parks and Recreation. Yeah. Her father was Thomas Maunupau Sr. And Thomas Maunupau was considered a Hawaiian language and land and water rights expert, Hawaiian cultural expert in his time. And he had 12 children. His daughter Adeline was gifted with hula and voice, but all the Maunupaus did something. So I think when Thomas Maunupau took Helen Roberts on that study, I think it was 1922, he was the one that took Helen Roberts to those informants. He must have really realized that all of this is going away, was dying. So he sent his daughter Adeline to go learn from people. Her teachers were Annie Baker, which was her aunt, lived in Kualoa, Hōkūlani Richards, who taught hula on Cartwright Road in Waikiki. Hōkūlani Richards eventually ended up living in Maui. And Hōkūlani Richards was a student of Ilala Ole's. And Adeline Lee also learned from Ilala Ole, because he was a relative to the Maunupaus, because they're from the big island, Kona. Adeline Lee also learned hula pahu from Tam Hiona. And for 15 years, Adeline Lee went to Mrs. Pukui every Wednesday afternoon at her home in Birch Street to go and learn the hula o lapa, the hula ala apapa. Adeline Lee was also one of the dancers in 1947 with Keaka Kanahele and them, doing the hula pahu and those hulas of Kauai, because Adeline Lee's father, Thomas Maunupau, directed the building of all the halepili, which later becomes Ulumau Village, you're supposed to remember, yeah? And Adeline Lee also learned from Auntie Alice Kavikani Garner. Now, I used to go to St. Patrick Church at Auntie May every day we went to church, and every day, not every Sunday, but every day, 8 o'clock Mass.
She had a regular seat.
She did.
She had a regular seat.
No, that's right. Yeah, right there at St. Patrick Church. So sometimes, after church, we go talk, we go to Woolworths at Kahala Mall, we have coffee. And inside there, you see Uncle Bill Lincoln and Auntie Nora Santos there too. Yeah. But it was Auntie May told me that Alice Kavikani, she had learned hula from Maui. And she believed that the olapas and things that Alice Kavikani learned came from Mama Bray. That's what she believed. So I had, learned those dances from her. And so Adeline Lee had many teachers because of her father's association with all kinds of people. And Adeline Lee, she really was of the old school. She really knew that, A'ole pau ka'ike ka halau ho'okahi. And she loved me so much that if she didn't know something, and if somebody was willing to teach me something, they would personally take me. And I think you folks might remember Hattie Au. I know you remember Hattie Au, who lived in Kahana Valley. She was Pu'aha'ahio's neighbor and niece. And she was the only one who knew the hula puniu.
Johnson's
the
daughter.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And then Pu'aloke, used to help them. The Della Serna used to help them, Mrs. Au. And so I was taken there with Aina Keawe and Adeline Lee to go to Kahana to learn the hula puniu. Nāpokā. That's right, that's the one. Yeah, and then she taught later, she taught me other things too, the uli uli and different dances that she wanted to share, the pahu and things like that. And then also Mr. Hōkūlani from Ku'au, was it John Hōkūlani? Yeah, he knew the hula hoi. And so Adeline Lee, she said, well, you can learn the hula hoi, because Adeline Lee didn't know hula hoi, and she didn't know hula puniu and things like that. And so she was, she very much aloha for, letting me to learn these things. And when I went to Kamehameha school, Auntie Nona Bima was there. And so I learned hula and things for the Bima family. And then I also helped Auntie Nona teach at St. Andrew's Priory, and they moved her studio from Waikiki over to the Priory. And so I learned from Nona Beamer. And then Uncle George Holokai needed somebody to assist him and to be a substitute in Kealoha Kalama show. This was in 1971. And so he had selected me. And so I'd learned his pahus and his other things that he had learned from Mrs. Makaena.
Lillian.
Lillian Makaena. Yeah, that was Namaka Helu's daughter-in-law? The blind lady from Honolulu. To learn those hulas. And then it was actually Auntie Huakale I credit for bringing me out as a hula olapa teacher. At, those hula conferences, people came by the thousands, They came up by the thousands because people wasn't doing the hula olapa years ago. And so, they needed another teacher. So Auntie Huakale called Auntie Adeline and asked if, I could have my own class. I was all pu'iwa with that.
But you always came with Adeline.
Yeah, because I always came with her. I'll go teach the hula. But I got to do my own now. So, but lucky thing we had those beautiful people with us during our lifetime, and doing all kinds of hula and seeing all kinds of things. And then later on, Auntie Sally Wood would share some of her dances, and Auntie Edith Kanakaole, she was so gracious, in teaching whoever wanted to learn and know something and offer sessions. And so we got to, meet these people and work with these people. And Uncle Henry Pa. I wanted to be one of his dancers so bad, and he refused me. No, but later on, because he used to work at Liberty House, Alama, right over here, and then we used to catch the bus together, Uncle Henry Pa.
The week shop.
Yeah, he used to do the men's toupees. And so, we talk about hula and things, and then Auntie Mattie Ho, Owen Ho's mother, them on Moki on the street, He used to have Owen Ho and their dancers over there. So we go over Auntie Maddie's house all the time. And eventually, he taught me, a few things in the hula. And so, that's how it was growing up in hula. And I'm 8th generation in my family, so I'm genetically engineered for this. But actually, I didn't learn anything from my family, even though, they still teach hula stuff. I didn't learn anything from my family. I'll keep it outside.
Well, and I think I just going to jump in.
Go ahead.
Yeah. So I think what Kimo is exhibiting is exactly for all of us sitting here what occurred because of the people that we were with. Their friends always also were a part of our learning. Yeah, they didn't go, this is my student and nobody learned, this is the Ole Pau Kaike. This is my student and they're not going any other place. If they don't know, they ask their friend, come teach.
That's
If they know and their friend want, they take you to go and do this. All of us have had interaction. That's why we're nodding, because Auntie Sally and Uncle Henry and all of those folks that are our icons today, our teachers said, "Oh, come teach my students this," or "You need our help. We're gonna go over there."
That's right.
And so they were the example to us that sharing of hula and what we love is a good thing. Yeah, it's a good thing. And all of us sitting here have had that experience and have been enriched because of all the other teachers that came into our lives because of our teacher.
But they're a different breed of people because I think at that time too, when we learned hula, it wasn't the Hawaiian Renaissance yet. No, it wasn't. And then it comes.
Yeah.
Never have that much people interested.
No, didn't have. Yeah. And then, but the thing is, I think was instilled in me is do not change anything. And Auntie Wakale Kamau was a very big stickler on that one. If you do somebody's dance, you do exactly the same. You don't change anything. And then I really got scared into that too because when I was a young teen, about 13, and Auntie Pat and I talked about this later, is that I learned hula kuahu for almost a year. And she's the only other person that I knew had hula in the presence of a kuahu. And if anybody ever learns hula kuahu, you're not gonna fool around with things in the hula, especially the ancient hula yet. And so you're not gonna change anything because you're scared. And they were sincere in carrying on after their lifetimes into ours and beyond. The hula o lapa and the hula ala papa, the hula pahu that they knew to be true in it. And so, to this day, I really believe that. I don't want to see anything change. I don't like. No, but but it's really interesting that the teachers today, the hula teachers, they really hang on to their students. They don't want them to learn anything from anybody else, yeah? But when we had uniki means get the hell out of here.
That is correct.
No, like when you graduate from high school, Kamehameha not gonna tell me come back. They didn't even want me when I was there. No, you go on for education, yeah?
Oh, yeah.
Can you blame them?
No, cannot.
Mahalo.
Yeah.
You see how you folks take one question and you guys just expound on
you
that
see
question, yeah?
Lalo.
But Mike Kai, that's, you're every moderator's dream panel.
But I wanted to mention something, though. All these people that they're speaking about, they were truly of another generation. They were not our contemporaries, and we never looked at them that way. We never looked at them that way. We never expected them to interact with us that way. For myself, I grew up in the halau, walking around with my mother, cleaning up the halau, picking up things, piling up the costumes, doing the sweeping and mopping, and living within the halau. So I never went to formal classes till I was about 16. So people said to me, "You must have been dancing since you were 2. No, I wasn't. I was going to ballet, I went to jazz, and I only got back involved into hula because I could make $10. And at that time, I wanted a surfboard, and it was $152 on Keaulana Boulevard at Hobie. And I wanted that. So they were auditioning for a group of girls to dance at Kaimana Beach Hotel. And it was called Na'upio Night, and you got $10. And I thought, I can do that. So they were having the audition at my mother's halau on Keamoku Street. And that was before Keamoku Street became the village it is now.
Korea Moku.
There was no Ala Moana shopping center. There was nothing. Scotty's maybe had just come in there, but there was nothing. And so I went to the audition, and my mother said, "Are you sure?" I mean, I think she thought she was just going to be humiliated. And I said, "I can do this." And so she said, "Well, go in there." And I went in there, and I got the job because I could do it. I heard my mother say it over and over. I saw them do it over and over and over, and I knew I could do it. Well, I did get the job. But the most important thing that I think we want you to know is that these people were not our contemporaries.
No.
And we never looked at them like that. And I think in today, when somebody does uniki, or somebody does take a few hula classes from this group, and then decides, well, I want to move on because what I've learned now can support me in another place to be more advanced, that they begin to deal with some of us as if we're their contemporaries. And we are not our students' contemporaries. They are our students, and we are their teachers. And many times, others hold us responsible for their behavior. And it is true, we try to teach them as best that we can, but like all children in a house, everybody's personality jumps forward. And you know, there are sometimes you have one child that will not let their mother have the last word. And in hula, we have the same things. So all of us have never thought, Kimo never thought to say, "Oh, hey, Adeline." You know, we'd never think that, or, "Oh, you folks all know ho'akale." We would never think to flippantly make reference to them. And I think nowadays, people tend to do that. When they go someplace, they list the 18 people they took workshops from. And, you know, and you're like, well, but they are not necessarily our students. As everybody said here, you were taken, you were nurtured, and you were developed from the inside out. Inside out. And I think that's what everybody exhibits, is their tradition, their lineage, their behavior, and their attitude toward hula and things Hawaiian.
Beautiful. You know, that leads to this question. You've all sort of alluded to it and talked about it already, and the preparation of becoming a kumu. You know, the mindset, as well as the physical and the spiritual preparation to become a teacher. So the question next is, it can be a broad question or it can be a deep hohonu question, is, you know, how do you prepare when you decide you want to teach? In some cases, it probably wasn't a choice of yours. You probably were chosen to teach, yeah? But maybe you could speak to that, you know, how you prepare to become a kumu. You know, what are the qualities that are necessary, and as well as the training. So many young kumu today want to be able to have that lineage, and as you just alluded to, Auntie Coline, is what we call a name dropping, yeah? I've taken this many workshops, and then these are my kumu, one lesson. Yeah, and why is that? Why is it we've come to a point where so many young people feel an urge or a need to have to be connected to somebody? And how have we come to this state in time, you know? How can we prepare them, or what would your thoughts be on how to best prepare to become a kumu?
Someone else, or how, the first half was how did we prepare, then your second half, how do we prepare others?
How you prepare others. Perhaps,
Others.
yeah. So it's probably a two-part question, yeah?
Well, as far as, you know, how I became a kumu, you know, us two guys was laughing over here because, no, it's not a choice. Your kumu told you.
Choose you.
The teacher chooses student.
Yeah.
Now the student, they sign up for the teacher, but in those days, the teacher looked all over and she might not see anything ono, and she just looked the other way. And then she finally sees something, and then that's going to be the student.
That's right.
Then you don't have any choice from then on.
So what are those qualities in that one punahele, or that chosen one, that you might think your kumu saw in you, perhaps, or your kupuna saw in you?
Well, to say, you know, what would I look for, you know, is lots of things. It isn't just one thing. It has to do with, on the basic level, ability. You know, on the primary level, ability. They can dance or they can chant. You know, what you've taught them, their ability has arisen. So on the basic level is ability. But there is also desire, and there is also a thirst for learning. And there is also a knowledge that this person puts hula first. Yeah, that hula is, I'm going to divert a little bit. The whole idea of a hula practitioner, you know, we hear that word a lot, or those words a lot. For me, a hula dancer is not necessarily a hula practitioner. A hula practitioner is someone who hula is who they are. It is what they think of all the time. It's what gets them going and excited and their passion. You know, so that is the practitioner. So yeah, we have maybe millions of hula dancers, but I wouldn't consider them hula practitioners. So where that leads to is that's what a teacher sees in students to know maybe, and it's a maybe for a really long time. It's a maybe for a really long time until you kind of think, okay, I can tell you, you never think you're ready. When your Kumu told you, okay, time for you to go, you know, time for you to start halau, time for you to have your own class, you always are going, oh my, no, I don't want to. Just like you, oh my gosh, you know, it's like I'm not worthy, because we measure ourselves against our teacher. Of course you're not going to be worthy. You know, that's not possible. But they see something. And I don't know what they saw, but I know what I look for. And I think it may have been similar. And those few places are the things to start with, that there's a thirst for knowledge, that they have a love and a passion for hula and chant and Hawaiian culture, and it shows in their life. And then, you know, they got to be able to dance good.
Ability, yeah.
Ability, they got to be able to dance good so they can carry forth your teaching. And remember, so they can carry forth your teaching.
And be faithful to that teaching. Not go make up your own and all kinds of stuff.
I want to ask, just to take off of Auntie's statement, where does humility fall into that too, in your statement about, you know, that feeling like, I'm not worthy, I'm not ready to be as my elders, my kumu, and teaching that. Is that a sense of humility, and is that something you look for in
Well, I
in
think
that
the sense
one?
of humility is to always know you are a student. You are always a student. I always tell people, okay, if I offend anybody in here, sorry. If a kumu hula tells you they know everything about hula, they lie. They lie.
That's true.
Because that's not possible.
No.
Auntie Alice used to say that she said, you know, I hate when they put my name in a paper, authority. She said, and Kavena said the same thing too.
Yes.
Mary Kavena Pukui said that. She said, every day we learn something. And education is a process. And in the morning, if I wake up and I learn something, I thank Akua for that. And Auntie Alice used to say, oh, you know, get plenty lily people out there. I wake up the next morning, I get all bites on top of my leg because that's kepalo. They're jealous. So you know when you go, boy, you don't say nothing. You go, ha, ha, ha. You do your work, and when Pā'ū, let them talk. You huli kua and you ho'i. She said, you go with a humble heart and do your work, and then ho'i. She said, no go blab, blab, blab. The kind of wala'au, you wonder why they got a wala'au if they know what they're doing.
We weren't allowed to talk about anything we learned in hula, especially. Well, you know, you're learning hula in the 1960s, and you're a boy. You don't want anybody to. No, people were very, very cruel. They call you mahu, tili, any kind, yeah. They were very, very cruel, and I think Adeline Lee knew that, but I had the aptitude for it, like you said. You have to have the aptitude for it. You got to dance, and so, you know, even though people were cruel, especially as a boy growing up in hula, you know, there's somehow you don't care. because the hula is most important. And that's the lesson you learn. It's the hula that's important, not you. Yeah, you just the medium through which the hula goes through.
You're just one link in the chain. But I can say one thing about teaching. I went to, I think there were 17 of those workshops.
Yes, 17.
Conferences on, and I think Kimo and Adeline came to every one of them just about.
No, it was 16. yeah.
But what was beautiful to see was Adeline would come to class and Kimo would teach the class. And Adeline would sit down and everyone would say, I wonder if she can even dance. Look at him, he's doing everything. He's dancing, he's po-pa'ing and everything. But you could see that when you ask how people learn, you could see that transition was occurring. Like me with Auntie Hōkūlani, she'd say, okay, you taught boys for 2 years, now you're going to teach beginner women. I said, I don't want to teach beginner women. She said, you got to learn all the meles, you got to learn the nohos, you got to learn the hopa. Then you go in intermediate women. And she would come in the class, and these teachers were so smart. They sit in the back of the class and they watch. They never correct you while you're teaching. And then after the class is Pā'ū, then you catch hell after that. That's right. But she never humiliated you in front of the class.
That's right.
And you always felt like they had your back.
You know, talking about Nāpokā and Kimo, in the 60s, I was dancing in Waikiki, for my first $10. I went to Donho to $200, and that was for To You, Sweetheart, Aloha. And to me, that was hula, because that was the time. There was not this great resurgence of all things old or all things ancient or let's get the hakumeli up there. There were no such things as that. But I always remember Kimo and his chanting and his going on the bus up and down in Manoa, going to Adeline Lee, because that family was my father's family, the Aius from Kona. And I remember always running into Nāpokā at Ala with the Patria sisters. I said, where are you guys going?
long hair.
They're going, oh, we got to go and dance. I said, like, only you guys? I said, yeah, only us. I said, where's Hōkūlani? Oh, she's going to meet us over there. But we all knew each other when we were little. We were little, and we knew which people were dancing and who they were dancing for. It was very clear. It was like watching Aloha Wi Ko'olaulea, and you heard the songs, and you knew which halau that was. You looked at the ulilis. Pink. John P. Ilani Watkins is here from the country. Or orange, and there's the Alama sisters.
The Alama sisters.
And then red and yellow, Kahua Hawaii. Oh, that's Mikey Aiu, them over there.
Yeah.
But we all knew each other. So another 2 generations have come in hula. And going back to your question, why is it that they want to be connected? Because we as Hawaiians always want to be connected, because it validates who we are. If we're not connected in some way, we question who we are. And so we seek something to connect to. But the way the connections are made now are like immediate plug-ins. And that's not how we are. But we want to and we need to be connected. Because if we aren't, we're out there doing something, and then we just tell ourselves how wonderful we are. And then, and then pretty soon they refer to themselves as the second Kawena Pukui, and we're like, oh my goodness. But we need to be connected, but the way we connect is not correct. And I think in education, it sets it up to do it correctly. We never ever thought to utilize somebody else's kahiko and to do it just because it looked good, looked exciting. We liked that. We did our own. You could hear by the drum beats too. The 7s on the punio or the 4 on the pahu. We could tell who was drumming, and we never assumed to know everything. And even when we knew each other, we were friendly with each other. There were no stratified lines of this is your halau and this is our halau and this is your lineage. We never even spoke about lineage. That's a very new thing, and that's only come since the Renaissance. And because people want to be connected. And like Nāpokā said in Hoku and Kimo, we were never embarrassed or humiliated by our Kumu. That is a new way of teaching. None of us were ever like that. Later, after everybody left, then we would get a big wow, talking to. But never with harsh words. Never with swearing, never with abuse, never with humiliation. Our teachers spoke to us to help us. They didn't demean our spirit or destroy our little bit of identity as being Hawaiians, because that is not even the way we learned within our homes. So the thing now in education and in many of the halau is to humiliate and embarrass the student in front of visiting kumu or other people.
Or even
to,
swear.
to be the loudest, you know, to swear and think it's okay. It's not okay. It's not okay. And being abusive in hula is not okay. I didn't, but others did get the plumini out. And many of them even got the pu'ili. But by the time I was in hula with my mother, we didn't get that. We didn't get that. I think my mother, for our lineage, was the last one where a lokali would stand on her thighs. And she was a young girl. So, you know, that, yeah, and lokali wasn't tiny. So we were not brought up in that hula that is today. So it's very difficult sometimes for me to be invited somewhere and watch a kumu humiliate their student. For me, I don't need that. And so I think that's an important thing in education, to demean someone, to hurt them, so the teacher is uplifted is not the way. And there is a gentle way to lift up the little Hawaiianness you have and to make it so important that you want to learn everything about your Hawaii. And I think in that vein, why people refer back to my mother is because she did that for many people. Took their little Hawaiianness and lifted them high enough that they could, as Kimo said, go out, and Hoku said, go to other places and learn and delve into other aspects of Hawaii.
Your mother was loving, because I remember once I had to do, I was a dancer for something, and she was the one who taught the hula. And when your mother started to teach, I couldn't believe it. I never saw anybody teach hula that way, you know, with so much love. And plus, she liked my dancing, so I really liked her.
She did. She said, he has a very good ka'o and a really, really nice ami. And you know, hula people, we like to look at ami.
Oh, absolutely.
Because ami is clean, very nice, sometimes very sensual, but very beautiful and rhythmic. And we, as hula people, like to watch somebody's kikala. There's nothing wrong. Yeah, we're not crazy, but we like that movement. It's lovely, and we'll say to each other, and we don't feel funny saying to somebody else's student, that was a beautiful hula.
No, but when you have a good controlled ami, you know that your hula is in control. It's not out of control.
Can I just say something? In my little corner, there's so many different ways that people have embraced hula, and Coline talked about dancing in her venue, etc. Where I came from, we never exchanged money at all from the very beginning. I never paid a penny for hula.
Oh, neither did
I never got any money. Whatever money we got always went into the kitty for costumes or for whatever we were going to do. And it's funny because Auntie Aiu was a kapu dancer. She had a kuahu. Auntie Wakale knew that. We had to take apart her kuahu when she died. We went into her home and we went out and burnt all the things that were on the kuahu. And when we were burning that day, we were burning in Nāpokā, her little kamaka ukulele up in her kuahu room. The fingers went across the strings of the ukulele, and nobody was standing near the Sissy. Look at me, I look at Sissy. We ran out of the room. We said, we're out of here, man. But these people lived in a different time, and it was a time when the hula was kapu and it was sacred. So here we are today, and they're bringing kuahu back sometime, and I consider it like we have a residue of that sacredness that lingers with us. And the last time that we went to Ke'e at Ha'ena with Auntie Aiu, she already had a big puka in her throat. She was dying of throat cancer. And I went with Auntie Wakale and Auntie Aiu, and we climbed up, and she was introducing us to the pohakus that she knew going up to the altar. And she got up there, she broke down and cried, and she said, I'm not coming back. This is my pula pula. She said, it's going to be 100 times harder for them to find people that are not going to have egos, that are not going to know the language, et cetera, to carry on the sacred legacy of the hula. And she said, the time will come harder for you than it ever was. And she waited, and then she did her mohai and we left. And when you think about it, I think hula is becoming more commodified today and less sacred. And maybe Auntie O was right, we're moving away from that. And I don't know whether it's good or bad, but I still have a deep respect for the chants that we do. I don't want to just go up and make it a show. It's not just for entertainment, the dances that we learned. And that's one dichotomy that I see between today and what's happening today. You can't stop what's happening today, but I hope that somewhere in our Hawaiian hearts, we know that we came from hula being religious and it being sacred, and maybe we can keep that element of respect and that some element of sacredness with it as we continue on, that aloha.
That is correct.
It's a nice segue to this question I want to ask you, and you've already started to address it, is how do you assess what you're sharing? Uncle Kimo said a little earlier how it's important that what is passed down to us is not changed. Yeah, that is something that's very important and dear to him and most kumu. How do you assess that when you share that ike ku'una, when you teach, whatever you teach to your haumana, how do you assess that they have learned that? And what is it, besides the things that you've already spoken of, what other things are you looking for as you assess them? You talked about the fine skills, for example, the beautiful ami. We talk about respect and sacredness and malama and keeping things the way it was taught to you. Are there other things that you look for as you assess your haumana?
I think there's different levels, and all depends on what you want to teach and who you're teaching, and you're going to be teaching towards that level. You know, because in hula there's so much. You know, like I taught children for many years, and I'm not a good children's teacher.
No.
Yeah.
I'm amazed. But I hear you're a damn good high school teacher.
Well, nobody died yet. But I think when you're teaching at that level, you're more interested in the mechanics of teaching. You know, just to get your body to move the right way and all of that kind of stuff. And so you're going to assess them, well, if you can do this, then you can go to another level, and, you know, of refinement and this and that. And there are going to be things that you're going to teach and what you're not going to teach. In 1998, I started my first Hula Olapa class, and actually it was not my idea, it was Auntie Pat's idea. But I made a deal with her that I would do it if she would help me. You know, because I didn't really, the last time I taught, you know, chants was like with Auntie same time, you know. When I had my hula studio, I didn't teach the hula olapa and stuff. I mean, when I first picked up an ipu, my students thought I was nuts. It didn't, you know, they never saw me up butty and everything else, yeah. But that's how it was. And so I had to go and look at hulas that I didn't do for a very long time. And she learned from, you know, Kavena Pukui and Kapua and Ilala Ole. And so Adeline Lee learned from Mrs. Pukui in Ilala Ole too, not Kapua. And so I reviewed the dances with her. I said, my goodness, I said, you know, you're the closest thing I have to a hula sister. Yeah, and you learned these dances in 1933. And I'm not going to learn them until, you know, like maybe 1973 or so. And it was really, really interesting that the way the dances came to me was pretty much the same when I reviewed them with her. And my last teacher was Betty Atkinson, who was Ilala Ole's daughter. She was my neighbor. I lived right down here for a while on Kahakai Drive, right by the convention center. And she lived right around the corner from me. And that was really, really interesting, how she would become my neighbor. And like how you said, you know, you don't go choose your hula teacher, they choose you. So I think maybe, you know, she did her hocus pocus or whatever, and I ended up living by her. but you know.
But you know, in this day of YouTube, Hula Hālau O YouTube, there's a lot of those around. and Google Kumus.
Yeah, online.
That bond that Adeline had with you, you feel like they're giving you some of their uhane when they're with you. They're passing on their mana to you, and you see them getting na wali wali and palu palu, and pretty soon they fade out of the picture and the transition is made. I don't think that can happen on YouTube.
No, cannot.
So I wonder where we're going.
Well, you know, when
Where are we going with all of that?
you know, hula is known throughout the world. It is, I believe, it is the most recognizable of any native dance throughout the world. So the job that we have done is make our students make hula look easy when it is damn hard. But we have made our students in our teaching look so beautiful in their
Plus
dancing.
we give them paper with words.
Yeah.
No, that didn't happen, you know. It didn't
So, you know, everybody thinks easy. Hula is easy.
Yeah, I can do this.
Because look how easy, and you go to the hotel, and in one easy lesson, you too can dance hula. You know, so they think, oh, easy hula. So if I see it on the YouTube, I can do that too. Looks like hell, but I can do that too. And it doesn't do us service. Yeah, it doesn't do hula service. All of us, I think, are saying, in order to learn hula, you must spend time.
Oh, absolutely.
And
You
work.
must spend time with your kumu. You cannot 2 years and I know everything about hula. That's not possible. You must spend time, a lifetime, a lifetime.
Put it in your head, not in your computer. Bye-bye, you get digital dementia. No, you know, when they went to go interview like Helen Roberts, she, oh, you know, collect the chance. She said, oh, wait, I got to go online. I got to go on my computer, get the words. So it came right out of their heads, right out of their mouths.
But they
their
go like
bodies.
this and they put that by you when they like learn from you. I'll go do that to you, and then after I went home study. I said, no, you gotta learn it
You
now.
go study right here. Hey, alo, hey, alo. That's how it's done.
How else can you correct them when they're going off?
Yeah,
You know,
you
so
cannot.
for the assessing of the student, you know, I think it comes from that half. Is that number one, they have to spend time. They have to spend
That's right.
time with you in order for you to be able to assess them appropriately. The second thing is, okay, let's move forward on this dance and not be good. You come 1 week, we do this. Next week, we back in square one again. Come again this week, we back in square one. You know, moving on, because we expect them to apo. You know, listen, repeat, follow, watch, do. You know, we expect that. And so when you're assessing your student, you look for that. Did I just waste my week last week?
No, they wasted theirs and let them have it.
You know? So we assess that. We assess that. Are they progressing as we think in our brain they should be progressing? Okay, next month, they learned this. We still stuck on it 3 months later. We know it's not us.
Absolutely not.
It's not us. So it's the student. You know,
Yeah,
hold on that. So assessing the student beyond, you know, the ability to dance and being at class every week is that we progress. So I think, you know, then the next thing, well, does that make it our responsibility to adjust the teaching style depending on the student's need?
Hau'oli.
No.
The hula not for you, that's all.
No.
Next.
Yeah, that's what it is, not
You know,
for
so
you.
sorry, the Moena Ha guys over there, the Moena Ha, when you pay attention to the learning styles of each student and then you adjust your teaching to the
Oh, IEP, that's for special ed. It's not for hula.
traditional hula instruction. You don't do that.
Okay, so I'm not
Pick
going to
up
ask.
or move
I'm
out.
not asking the next question. So you've answered the next question. Thank you very much. about adjusting to their teaching style.
Hōkū.
But you said something good, Auntie. You know, when you assess, you look at their level of dedication and how they so when they come back next time, you're not hana ho again.
And you
yeah?
know they practiced at home.
You know they
put
practice.
in their time.
There's dedication to,
Yeah.
to perfecting and learning. And you also, I heard you say about taking notes and having pipa now. And from what I recall, that's something that your mama, Auntie Maiki,
Well, it was Kavena.
pivotal
It was
part,
her
yeah.
teacher who told her she should. She said, you know, Maiki, you have me, and you have your grandaunt, you have your family, and people don't have that anymore, and they don't have easy access. So it was her teachers, Kavena, Lokalia, Vicky Ii, Alice Namakelua, who said to her, Maiki, what are you going to do? And she said, well, what about a blackboard? They said, fine. And then she began to notate her dances so that, and now we're not talking only about kahiko because that was something later. We're talking about awana because the music that was played was not kahiko. They took old kahiko tunes like kuhiau and made them into hula awana. So there were many groups that were not halau because that came much later. The name of my mother's was Margaret Aiu's Hula Studio.
Yep.
That was her name, Margaret Aiu's Hula Studio on Kemoku Street, big pink sign. People would go up and down, Margaret Aiu's Hula Studio. And then I think it was 1958, her teachers felt she could call herself a halau. So the sign man, Mr. Whittle, should have made the surfboard Hālau Hula O Maiki. But he knew my mother had 7 children, and my father was a fireman at the Alarm Bureau, and we were all going to private school, Catholic school, and she needed money to take care of us. And it was on that basis that my mother even got involved in hula. Many of the hula people, they danced for the church to raise money for the church. There wasn't anything wrong with that. To raise money for the church. That's how all the Hawaiian churches and the Catholic churches in every area survived, by the Hawaiians who did the hula.
And the luau's.
And the luau's for the church. So my mother went from the house, the garage, to the church hall, from the church hall at Blessed Sacrament to Wilder Avenue. And that was the first place where she paid to have a studio. It was a studio, Margaret Aiu's Hula Studio. And when her teachers, and we are talking about these 4, felt that she had earned the right, they gave her that name. But the sign man, Mr. Whittle, thought, this lady needs money, she's got all those kids, people don't know what halau is. So he put Hula Hālau O Maiki. And that is how it came out. So many years later, when other people wanted to start a halau, they took Hula Hālau O whoever, Hula Hālau O whoever. But we know the story behind that. Then when my mother moved in 1973 to Kalakaua Avenue above Dyke's Radiator Shop, then she put out Hālau Hula O Maiki. And then in 1979, my mother moved the halau to Waikiki. And at that time, she developed a whole school, a kahiko room, a awana room, a library named after Kavena, and her teachers encouraged her to do that. This was in 1979. The school didn't last very long. Its lifetime was very short. It was 1 year. In 1 year, Hawaii was not ready for that kind of cultural enrichment, cultural foundation to education. They were not ready. So what everybody thinks is like happening now, happened before, it never did. So people had to write. And if you were fortunate like Nāpokā to be on a 1-and-1 or 3-and-1, then you had that person chanting for you over and over, riding in the car, telling you stories. And on the other end, you had many people wanting to connect to Hawaiian-ness and not knowing how. And so the hula was notated. And that's why people may misunderstand and think that this has always been, kahiko has always been at the forefront of hula. It never was. There was one select person to dance the kahiko in our halau. You all know Auntie Momi.
Momi, yep. Ha'arona.
Because my mother had to pa'i, so Momi had to dance. You know, and we were little, we were not going to do it at that time. And you'd all know that for years. She was my mother's very close friend, and she did the kahiko. Not until after 1972 did kahiko become popular in that sense where more people were able to do it. Whether they did it correctly, that would be another panel. Whether they did it, to honor their teachers properly, that would be probably another discussion. But the thing is that there was now this group who could move forward along with all the other families now. We're talking halau, and we're talking families that had their own traditions, everybody moving together. There was not one person, there were many. And people forget there was Ku'ulei Stibbert.
Oh, sure. Yes,
She taught
Liberty
on King
Baker.
Street.
Liberty Bank
You know,
House, yeah.
there were so many, many people. And I only know that because I knew their grandchildren or their children, and we all knew each other. So this kahiko, which they do so much and pour out, that is not the only identity we have as hula people.
And for a long time, the kahiko, the Hawaiian people didn't want to identify with the kahiko. When Auntie Hōkūlani started calling around to start those state council workshops in 1969, there was only a handful of people. She went through all the yellow pages and all of her connections that even admitted that they taught traditional hula, because there was such a stigma on it because it was represented the old gods, and they didn't want it. So this embracing of hula is just really kind of new.
It is.
Yeah. We came around in a full circle. Yeah.
So I'd like to talk a little bit about Coline's statement about the different schools, families, groups that were our teachers, contemporaries that, you know, then were moving along, but then, you know, occurred across the state. You know, they were families across the state that kept their traditions moving forward in whatever manner they felt was important to them, whether they kept it only in their family or whether they decided to share it with the community. They decided how they wanted that to happen. And I just want to support in any of you out there who come from this kind of hula learning. It is as viable as any halau you see on a Merry Monarch stage. Your family traditions and your family way of dancing or doing whatever is as viable as any other famous, whatever that means, people or place, because it comes from the life of your family. And you might think, we don't look like everybody else. Oh, okay, that's a cool thing. You know, we dance a little different than everybody else. That's because it comes out of your ohana and your ohana's life and your ohana or your community's life. And that is as viable as anybody else's tradition. So I support any of you in there that come from that. Never, ever feel that your family's learning is less than anyone else's. For your family, it is the way that you need to be. So when you look, you, us, anybody, look at hula, and I think we always go on the before and now, yeah, because get gray hair. So, you know, I'm not sure.
Get rid of it.
Solve that problem.
Get rid of it.
Well, because, you know, before, and these guys will tell you, before, you can recognize who danced for who.
Oh, yeah. Yeah,
You
could tell
recognize,
the way they dance.
they learned from Auntie Maiki. They learned from Hōkūlani. They learned from Auntie Edith. They learned from Adeline. They learned from whoever. You recognize their style and you applauded it, you know? And you would, like Coline said, you wouldn't, or maybe it was you wouldn't go and go, oh, I think that's pretty. I go and dance like them. I never took a class from Auntie Maiki in my life, but I think I can do that.
Yeah.
Never.
No, that was
But
called stealing,
it was
that's why.
beautiful to see the differences.
Yes, it was.
It was beautiful to see the differences. You know, again, I'm sorry if I'm going to offend anybody, but the homogenization of hula as we see it now has lost something in its homogenization, that if you don't come from a tradition that you want to continue, if you don't come from that and you think, oh, these guys are winning Merry Monarch, I can dance like them now. And then you watch the TV, you get the DVD, and okay, I can dance like this. Okay, 2 years from now, oh, these other guys are winning Merry Monarch. I'm going to change, and I'm going to dance like them because they're winning. So I'm going to change, dance like them, get the DVD, follow them, I dance like them. So homogenization of hula starts to occur when I feel it was beautiful when we saw the differences.
Yeah, because the hula came first, not the person.
Not the person.
And also besides just the homogenization and the emphasis on precision, because of the venues are limited in terms of where we can dance today, and a lot of it is unfortunately competition. I think another thing that we need to really take notice of and celebrate is creativity. Because I don't even think that I've judged many Merry Monarchs. There's no category for creativity. And I always felt that if someone is creating within the hula vein and they have that genius, and not everyone has that genius, and they can do something very beautiful, they should get credit for that. And what happens is, I got one Daryl Lupenui 1982 Merry Monarch tape with a canoe paddle, and I'm going to clone them. And they come in and they do the exact same dance that Daryl did 20 years ago.
Thinking we've all forgotten, yeah.
And my question, and my question is,
No.
what ike does that teacher have? All they're doing is copying. And what creativity does that have? And that's a surefire way of a culture stagnating when we don't start to celebrate the creativity. Because hula was about creativity and healing and the positive forces of life, like how Coline was saying, the maikai side, not the make side, the living side of life. And today as a culture, I don't think we're celebrating creativity.
No. But there's a Hawaiian way how to create, though.
Yeah.
I see creativity, but it's not Hawaiian. You know, there's rules in hula that we're bounded by.
But celebrate the ones that are creating within the Hawaiian context.
Yeah.
And
like,
not just doing the same thing over and over.
Yeah, like
and
Uncle
over.
Henry Paul was the creator.
Yeah.
And he told me, this hulas
Beautiful.
are beautiful hulas. But he knew how to do it within the confines.
And Johnny Alameda was a beautiful songwriter. He wasn't writing within his own context. He was definitely a creative man, but he had such a creative spirit. And to me, I think as a culture today, we have to start looking critically at lifting up the people that are creative. Yeah.
And I agree, and I think that's where and I'm going to differ maybe a little bit from you, Nāpokā, because to some degree, competition is good.
Yeah.
Because it prepares a dancer to be at a level they may not normally get if Kumu isn't jumping down that road. Yeah? I don't compete any longer. It is a choice. Yeah, it is a choice. But I can see the imperative to compete. What I don't appreciate is when the competition leaves the stage and exists in the lives of the dancer outside of the competition stage. When no longer are you talking to so-and-so because they belong to that halau, and that halau is against us when we compete. No, you're competing against your personal best, not against that halau and against that kumu and against that dancer. It is against your personal best. You try your personal best to perfect, because our kumus were like that. Yeah. You gotta perfect what you know. You perfect that to fine quality. I agree with Nāpokā that if hula were not creative, how do we have all these schools that do wonderful work? If hula were not creative, how can we take the chants, the mele that were left on paper only, and still able to create a beautiful hula from a chant that we only have words for. We take the teachings of our teacher, the sounds we have heard, the movements we have learned, and we look at the words and we try and channel our kumu to help us continue to create. Yeah, so with that, I agree with you. That
And I don't disagree about the competition. I'm just saying that there are not many venues
that's right.
Competition is almost the only venue we have now.
To show
So
the
it's
good
just
work that you do.
exclusiveness
That's
of that as the venue.
the good work
Yeah.
that you do.
Competition is good.
Nāpokā said something about creativity that's very important, and I had a big lesson in that. In 1971, I had come back from Mexico on a trip to visit my aunt, and I went to see the Ballet Folklorico. And I saw this beautiful dance, the dance of the deer. And I thought to myself, I've read this legend. I know we have a dance of the deer somewhere. So I choreographed a piece in 1975, jumping off of what Kamakilo Campbell had done in 1953. And my mother was the choreographer for that and danced in the story of Kamokila. Well, I had just finished my BA at the university, and I had just done my drama and my jazz, and I'd come back from London, and I thought, I can do this. I can do this. I'm 23 years old. I can do this. So I choreographed this whole piece, inspired by the recording of Kamakila, lifting her slumbering earthly body. You know, I was like, I can do it. I got all the chants I knew, so limited, only what I knew, limited brain. I wrote this whole thing. I entered the choreographic awards at UH, and I won. And I thought, all right now, I'm going to do the whole dance drama. So I trained all these girls, throwing their hair like the volcano and the wind. It was fantastic. It was fabulous. In 1975, it was fabulous. Well, I put it on at the Kaimuki Theater and then at Leeward. And when I first put it on Kaimuki Theater, at that time Auntie Vicky was alive, Lunny, Castino, they all came. And these were beautiful hula dancers. And they loved it. It was dramatic. It revived some of the chants. But then my mother spoke to me. I was so happy. I received bouquets. I was in the newspaper.
Business
I
cards.
thought, whoa, I've arrived. Not as a kumu, but just as, you know, a choreographer.
Were you Miss Hawaii yet?
No, oh yeah, I was. I had passed that stage. And my mother said to me, you know, it was very beautiful. We all loved it. And then she started to cry, and I thought, wow, what's going on here? Because I make my mother cry so much that, you know, when when she really was crying about hula, I thought, oh, what did I do? Well, there was one part of my choreography which I thought was the most excellent, where I got the biggest applause, not yelling. People didn't yell at those days. They just applauded really loud. I had all the dancers, 20 of them, with their backs turned to their audience, with their hair hanging down. And she referred to that. And I said, Mom, didn't you think that was so great? Their hair was all beautiful, all the same length, all shiny. I had one of my friends do all their hair. It was so beautiful. And she said, you know, for me, that was a beautiful thing to look at. But in our tradition, you were calling for the death of someone. You know, I think at that moment, I probably matured a half step, because I was just so full of all that I had learned and all I thought I could do. And when my mother told me that, I didn't want to do any more of it. So she took me to Auntie Vicky, and Auntie Vicky said, no, that's not what we're telling you. We're telling you the extensions of the uwahis are beautiful. The helas are beautiful. You're using all these Hawaiian steps. Very beautiful. But in the way you are staging some of these things, they are wrong. They are not right for us as Hawaiians. I took that whole thing out, I redid the whole thing, then I did it at Leeward. And then when my mother spoke to me, she didn't cry. But you know, Nāpokā is right. because I was young. I was like 23, like many of the Kumu hula now. You know, and there's not much space between this ear and this ear. You know, your head is like this. Yeah, like your head is like this, right? So you don't know any better. You just don't. But it's really important when someone who loves you, who really loves you, and wants you to continue, but on the right track.
Yes.
So that's what we're all saying.
Yeah. So creating within
You
that
know,
Hawaiian context.
And after I did that, that was sufficient for me. Because now, in 1984, I didn't have my mother anymore. And I was not going to chance to do something that would hurt someone I loved inadvertently because I just didn't know. So from my brain, from this went like this little bit, and only thanks to my cousin Kimo. Because in 1993, he reconnected me with my grandaunt, Sarah Ka'ilike of Kauai. And she became my mentor in all things Hawaiian. Had it not been for Kimo playing on our float and her calling Aiu, I would not have reconnected with her. And for all the time that she lived until her passing in 2004, she nurtured me in all those things that we treasure. You know, we impart what we think and feel to our students. No matter how we want to camouflage that, we impart to them our energy of the day, our thought on any item, anything to be discussed. So we are held responsible who trained in the old way or who were nurtured in the old way. We feel very responsible. So there should be a category for that.
I see Hōkūlani as being someone, she left our halau with her traditional foundation and she went to Maui. And Maui was like the desert lands back then. There was
Desert of Kahiko.
no hula at all. Everyone was saying, poor thing, she's going over there. And look what she created out of the, she wrote, like Hawaii, she rose up out of the ashes.
The fire, the flame.
Created an entire
fire
institution.
The flame.
That's creativity. But
Correct.
that's creativity
That
within
is
the Hawaiian context.
Exactly.
Yeah. And march to her own drum.
Hoi hoi, yeah, this is also interesting.
Only had Emma Shaw.
I'm going to ask you folks one more formal question, and you probably have already touched on to it. And then maybe we'll give our audience a chance to ninau and niele mai, yeah, hikino. So this question has a lot to do with what you're already saying, Coline. So what is your philosophy of the dissemination and preservation of culture? You know, you talk about those things, those little humbling lessons that we've learned from our elders and our own parents, our kumu, and how we stay within the confines of Hawaiian context.
I worked in historic preservation all my life, so mine will be brief. I learned from studying other cultures and other places that whenever you have something you want to preserve as a society and you mandate it from the top down, and you look at civilizations around the world where they had institutions and they were dictating to the masses what things should be, those things never lasted. And unfortunately, I think the beginning of our Hawaiian language renaissance, coming out of just the universities down, and then you had the Maori people that were teaching on the maraes in their garages, in their living rooms and stuff, that came from the bottom up. And very early on, I realized that you have to figure out who the people are out there that really are the bearers of tradition and support them. Not necessarily set up a big monolithic culture that's going to stand up at the top and dictate to everyone what your culture should be. But it's going out there and rolling your sleeves up and finding the people that really have the knowledge and helping them to do what they do best. And I think that's the way to preserve culture, is to do it from working amongst the people, meeting them where they're at, finding the ones that have the knowledge, and then supporting them, making it happen. Like most Hawaiians, they don't even have a place to teach dance. It's so hard just to do the fundamental things, even if you have the knowledge. So it's not so much setting up a massive institutional program that's going to dictate to everyone what Hawaiian culture is. It's going out there, finding out who has the culture left in our society and supporting those people wherever they're at, making it happen. Like Hoku was saying about the families.
Correct.
acknowledging the families and validating what they do already, yeah? Mahalo, Maikai.
There are, I think none of us would say we do not feel Hawaiian culture is the most important thing in our lives. Yeah, and the perpetuation, and I know you've been in preservation, but you know, I like perpetuation better.
Yeah, much
you know, preservation, mahalo for those who left for us, that we are able to now access in the many ways that we can access. Oh, and you know, I'm a techie person. I'm a techie person. You know, I've got laptops, I've got, you know, tabletops, I got my Android, I have my iPad, you know, so I do DSL camera, I do all this, so I'm a techie person. But it doesn't take away from the appreciation of that which has been given, as you said, he aloha, he aloha. From the time spent with your teacher that is never be replicated again, that we hold with us always, whether that teacher was within your family or outside of your family. That time that you spent with them is more precious than any other paper or any other computer knowledge that can be found. So for those of you who have a teacher like that, whether it is your mother, your cousin, your next door neighbor, your kumu hula, the man who take you fishing every other Saturday, the whatever, the time is precious with them. And that's what we have come to realize over time. Time with someone helps everything live. Yeah? It takes a long time, but the time is what is important. And what you hear in these stories are, it wasn't, I come to hula every Tuesday at 4 o'clock, and I'm gonna get everything from my kumu hula. That ain't gonna happen. You gotta be willing to drive them to the store. You have to be willing to ride with them on the airplane because they want company. Not that they need company, they want company, so you ride on the airplane with them. It comes from time. And I think for the myriad of halau that are created after 2 years of being with the Kumu or, you know, Hālau O YouTube, that is shallow. That is shallow and will never give you the full appreciation of the culture and the practice that we love. You have to spend time. So I think if you heard the collective amount of time that was held with each teacher was long. Yeah, was long and varied. You know, we did driving to Wai'anae because we're going to teach a workshop in Wai'anae. You're learning hula on the drive to Wai'anae. You're going to dance it that night and teach it tomorrow. Okie dokie. Yeah, I just learned it from the drive from Honolulu to Wai'anae. Okay, that was the only answer, yeah? Yes, Kumu. Well, or auntie or uncle, whoever, however, your mama.
And
yes.
if you get thrown off, call me up. I can go over the tune with you on the
thank
phone.
you.
But you better be ready by tomorrow.
By tomorrow. But you better be ready tomorrow anyway. So, you know, my encouragement to this learning process that has happened in halau is time. Is time. Enough time to learn the depth of it, not only the breadth of it, which occurs, but also the depth of it.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's my last 2 cents, promise.
You would pull everything together.
And you know, all of the people that teach, I just want to say this to you is that, you know, there's some little bit that we contribute to each other, whether that is your particular student or not. So when somebody in hula or when some other student who may not be in your group does something wonderful, it is our obligation to acknowledge it. Absolutely. And I think what happens with so many people is that they don't. You know, when somebody does hula nicely at a luau, say, say, that looks like so-and-so. Were you a student? You're so lovely. Your dancing is beautiful. Who is your kumu? I would like to recognize that, because what happens is that we stand on the negative for so long that the weight of who we are just crushes everything. So maybe we should take the step over and do that positive reinforcement and acknowledgement and take care of the hearts and the spirits of those children and those people in hula who need that. Because, you know, we never had a kuahu in our halau. God has always been our kuahu. And he is for many people. And I don't mean just in hula, for everything. And so if we will maintain that and let him be the first step in helping us to regroup who we are as Hawaiians and strengthen us and even turn our hula back, then I'm sure he will listen. Because we are a people who have always prayed and spoken to him. So on that kuahu.
Well, Coline, that's an interesting thing in terms of where we are today as Hawaiians and our spirituality.
Yes.
And that's something that's always comes up in terms of God. And do you make Laka Jesus? Or do you take a higher spiritual plane and still have a spiritual connection with hula? Because I think that's what is so unique about the kahiko and makes it so different. And it's a wonderful thing when you can combine spirituality and the arts together like that.
Well, that's what Auntie Io did.
And that's what you're talking
Lokalia.
about. And I think the spirituality is slowly escaping as it becomes more and more commodified.
And as Coline said earlier, I think that's for another panel.
Yes.
That makes a good discussion.
You know, we can just talk on and on.
And it's all fascinating. I just want to mahalo
it's
all of
not
you for
bad.
the time that you spent with us today and sharing your ike. You all exemplify our ohe pauka ike kau halau.